Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Bruce, what's going on, man? How are you?
Look at me. I'm brace free. I can. Look at that. Look at that. Can you see that?
Can
Look
you
at
do
that.
the other arm?
That. Yeah.
See that
This
one's all.
This is the one surgery. You want to see some scars, man? Look at. That's the. Wait, what am I doing here? Okay, I got to turn that way. Okay, like that's the scar here. Wait, from here to here. For the tricep surgery, and I got a bunch of scars up there for the shoulder surgery. But did you notice how nice and shiny like my skin is and beautiful and everything?
What's up with that?
Well, yeah, I use soap.
Oh, I got to try that. That made its way down here.
I know it confused Silva earlier on before we came on the air today. It was like, oh my God, look how clean it is. Well,
okay.
I bathe every day.
Wow, every day.
Every day.
You know what I meant?
Whether I need it or not.
When I met Tony Schiavone, he was bathing once a week.
And has that changed?
He's up to every day now.
What?
We're just bringing positive change about everywhere we go.
But he still doesn't clip his nails, does he?
Once a month, whether he needs it or not.
Wow, boy, you are like an agent of change. It's you take people that have done things one way for like
forever,
like 90 and a half,
yes,
and have changed him for the better. And the lovely Miss Lois.
How about that?
Could you imagine? I mean, just what the heck?
Lois has got to be thrilled. He's got to be smelling better running around the house now, right? Got to be. Maybe not. Okay.
I don't know. I don't
well, I mean, listen, you won't, thanks to some of our fabulous sponsors, but it's not time for that yet. Man, we are so excited to be with you here today. We have spent the last few weeks talking about the territories, and we saw a little bit of feedback. I think we both did that. Man, I needed a little more time spent on this or that. So we will be doing a little territories YouTube special sometime soon, probably not during WrestleMania season. Things are a little busy for Bruce these days, but somethingtowrestle.com is where you can check out our YouTube channel. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell. We're going to be coming your way and going live after WrestleMania. Let's talk about memory lane today, though, Bruce.
Like where I was last week, because like last week, hell, this time my leg was all swelled up.
Oh, do you want to share that story? Huh? What, I know you told me off air, but we haven't told our listeners. You had another.
I woke up a week ago Friday and couldn't walk. And my leg was all swollen up halfway up to my my thigh, and it was just all I couldn't put any weight on my leg, and called my doctor, who shout out to Dr. Paul Sethi, a great orthopedic that he is, a wonderful human being, even more so. Woke him up at 7:00 in the morning while he was on vacation in Florida, and had one of his colleagues come in to take care of me right away. But it was insane, man. They just took out vial after vial after vial after vial of fluid out of my knee. And I got to where I could actually walk by Sunday. And then on Tuesday, I got my brace off. So I'm living my best life. You have no idea, man, when you can't move your arm for 3 months plus to get the restrictive device off, and you can now move it. Yes, it is still sore. Yes, it is. I still have a lot of PT to do and still a lot of work and time to go. But look at me. I'm wearing my watches again. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful life. So patience is a virtue, something I don't have a lot of. But so yeah, man, it was a week ago. I was just doing the drizzling shits. It was horrible. My son carried me down the steps and got me into the car. Yes, he's a big, strong bastard, but
dude, what's going on with you? Like,
I'm getting old, Conrad. I'm just getting old, dude.
2 shoulders, tricep, now the knee. I mean, what's next? We're gonna start working.
I have one leg. I got my left leg's been okay so far. So I just put the jinx on that.
Yep. And that's gonna blow out any day now.
That'll blow out any day now. But whatever. You pick yourself up and jump back again. Do what you got to do. 3 kinds of people in this world. Those try, those give the best shot, those do whatever it takes. we do whatever it takes.
And I know that if you were to have to go get, like, let's say maybe you were going to make a running sprint towards the ring and dive in and accidentally hit your leg as you're sliding into the ring. And I don't know, tear a quad. You'd be out of action for quite a bit. But when you came back, if you wanted to conceal your identity, you might don a mask. And that's going to be our
then
topic.
No one would know.
Masked wrestlers. I know this is near and dear to your heart. People really loved us talking, or letting you talk rather, about the old territory days and the way things used to be. And one of the things that was much more prominent maybe back then than it is now, at least here in America, masked wrestlers. And I guess the masked wrestler debuted back in 1865 at the World's Fair. And I know most people think about like lucha libre when they think of masked wrestlers, but why do you think masked wrestlers were such a big deal for so long? And what was your first memory of seeing a masked wrestler?
Look, the masked wrestler goes back to the Masked Marvel. I think was the generic masked wrestler that was able to go. And I would always hear from people. You talk to some stranger on the street or sit next to you in the airplane. They say, "Oh yeah, my neighbor. They used to wrestle. They were they wore a mask. They were the Masked Marvel," and just kind of bullshit. I can't remember when there was an actual Masked Marvel in the business. It was so long ago. But for me, going back and growing up in El Paso, which is right on the Rio Grande and right across the river was Mexico, man, Juarez. And the lucha influence with Gory Guerrero, that was big. But the guys that wore masks, my first introduction to masked wrestlers was the Masked Infernos. They were managed by J.C. Dykes. They wore full body suits. They had the arm, their arms were exposed, but that was it. And they wore these like bluish purple gear and mask and everything, which was terrifying to me the first time I saw them live because we only had a black and white television. So seeing them live, but it was, who are they? That was always the question. Any masked wrestler, it was like, oh man, you want to see them get unmasked. The mystery of what do they look like? Who is it hiding underneath the mask? And underneath the mask, you could tell any story that you wanted to tell. And as a heel, which normally the masked wrestlers were usually always heels, with very few exceptions. You had your El Santo and your Mascaras early on. For me, they were heroes. They were masked heroes. And the masked wrestlers were heels, but there would always be stories that would circulate about them. Like, he's wanted. He like murdered 3 people there in Wisconsin. He came down here and put on a mask, and he's actually a murderer. That's why he wears that mask. He don't want anybody to know who the hell he is. I know who he is. He's a damn goddamn convict. He's a felon. And you could create these stories. You could make up anything that you wanted to make up and put it behind a mask, and people would believe it. There was a feeling of, yes, I feel this. Yes, man, this masked wrestler is just this horrible human being that has to hide their identity. And the mystery, the aura of the masked wrestler to me as a kid was just absolutely fascinating. And we would get the magazines and go through the magazines, and every once in a while, Lorenzo Parente and Bobby Hart were the medics or the interns, one of those damn things. There were some kind of doctors under masks, but like you would hear whispers of, oh yeah, that's who they are. And you would see them wrestling elsewhere under their real names and not wearing the mask. And you felt like you just had solved this incredible mystery when you would actually see someone without the mask. But with all that being said, And as a child and growing up, you know, there was always the intrigue of taking the mask off of someone. But Pat Patterson and I would sit there and analyze this. And when you break it down, it's a little silly in that when they finally take the mask off of whoever said masked wrestler is, it's always like, yeah, who the hell is that?
Right.
Okay. Most of the time, be a guy that worked under a mask all the time. And it was just, I don't know who the hell they are. Nobody knows who they are. But immediately they try and cover their face and cover their head and get out before anybody ever finds out their true identity. You don't want anybody to know your true identity. That's why you hide beneath a mask. And there were absolutely some true greats that made the mask, you know, really mean something. And you go back in time, El Santo was one of the first, you know, major masked heroes that I'd ever seen. You know, and he would come over and work El Paso all the time. And you know, 1969, Santo was probably getting old and wasn't as spectacular as he had been. But El Santo was not just a great in-ring performer and this legend. He also was a movie star and made a variety of movies and was hailed as this great Hispanic movie star. And he wore the mask in the movies. So the movie starred El Santo, and Santo was in the movie. And then later on, Mil Mascaras after that, you know, came Mil Mascaras, the man of 1,000 masks. And Mascaras, you know, followed those same footsteps of being a movie star, doing movies. Blue Demon was another one who went and did movies. And there was just such a mystery. But the great thing about good, bad, or indifferent, man, you know, yeah, I think different people kind of laugh at it and go, are you kidding me? But you didn't see Santo without his mask. Santo didn't pull up to the arena without his mask and then, you know, put something over his head. Santo left his room in the hotel with his mask on. Drove to the arena with the mask on. Went into the arena, went into the shower with the mask on. And would leave the arena and go back to his hotel with the mask on. They protected their identity. They protected their gimmick. They were very steadfast, and no one's going to get a picture of me. No one's going to see what I actually look like, so that they could then go and be a part of everyday life as who they were as a human being. And no one knew the difference. Nobody knew that, oh my God, you know, I'm talking to El Santo. You know, Mil Mascaras was one who was very protective in that way too. But Mascaras used to come into the Houston ticket office, and he would show up. He did a lot of business in Houston, and Mil would show up in the office without the mask in the middle of the week. And, you know, hello, I came to see Paul and blah, blah, blah. And they would meet and all this stuff. And when Mil was out of his mask, he was Aaron. It was Aaron Rodriguez. So he called him Aaron. But I had known him and saw him so many times without the mask. But by God, if he was going to work as Mil Mascaras, you didn't see him without the mask. He would ask for a ride to the hotel, and you'd wait for him and in the dressing room, and he would get undressed, wrap a towel around him, take a clean mask, his dress mask. He would take a clean mask into the shower with him, hanging on the thing. He would get in the shower, take a shower, take his mask off, wash his hair and his face, put the new fresh mask on, and get dressed. Okay, let's go. And then you would drive him far away from where anybody else stayed. Didn't stay with the boys. and you would take him out there, and he would get out of the car with his mask on into a civilian hotel, I'll call it, on the opposite side of town, and walk through the lobby with that mask on, because his identity, he was that protective of it. Which, you couldn't do that today, obviously, but I just
I'm not trying to be funny, but how did he check into the hotel?
Well, so I'm sure that when he arrived, he wasn't wearing his mask on the plane. So I'm sure that when he arrived, he probably went right to the hotel and just checked in as Aaron Rodriguez.
Okay.
But later, but again, and to that point, you're in the hotel and you see a masked man walking in.
Make a lot of people uncomfortable these days.
Yes. I mean, I think it would make a lot of people uncomfortable in those days.
Oh, yeah.
It was just, there was that dedication to the gimmick, the protection of their identity was very important to them. And they lived the gimmick. But yes, it was always just flabbergasting to me that you would look at people when they turned this down, they lived their life that way. And they never, they're, even today, you'll find very few pictures of what people claim to be Santo and what people, of Mascaras without the mask. Because Mascaras was also a huge bodybuilder without the mask. So it was a different time and, a different place. And I'll fast forward a little bit to when we did Los Super Astros in WWE with the lucha talent from CMLL, and Negro Casas brought in his group. Hijo del Santo, Santo's son, actually his son, wore the mask and did the same thing. They went to catering in their mask. They arrived at the building in their mask. So 6 hours before the show starts, they're walking around backstage in their masks. And I think a lot of the talent at that time just looked at it as, can you believe these guys? Are they taking them seriously? They're walking around with their mask on. And you guys eating with you had an eating mask, which only went to your nose. And so your mouth and chin and all that were exposed. Kind of like what Rey Mysterio wears now.
Yes.
It was an eating mask that the guys would wear if they were going to go eat. And that's what they did. But a lot of the luchadors guys, Santo, Hijo del Santo specifically, was very protective of that. And the first time that I met him, he came to the hotel to meet me in his mask. We went up to my room to have our meeting, and he took the mask off. I'm like going, Jesus Christ, man. This guy looked like a matinee idol. He actually looked like a 1950s matinee idol.
Wow.
That could have starred in any movie on looks alone. Very sophisticated, good-looking guy. I'm like, man, why do you wear the mask? It was his legacy. That was his legacy that he was going to carry on. And he was going to live the way that his father lived, and the way that his father taught him to protect the gimmick, protect your identity. Okay, but geez, we can make money with that guy, just fabulous. And Mascaras too. I don't think I ever, as a matter of fact, I know I didn't. I never saw Santo without his mask in person. But Mascaras was another one. He was a matinee idol. Good looking guy, great body. I was like, okay, dude, you could star in the movies without the mask easily and probably draw more people. So, it was a different way, and it was a different upbringing with the lucha style masked wrestlers and how they carried themselves and how they protected the gimmick. And in the States, it was different. You had you guys that really protected the gimmick and wore their masks all the time. Then there were guys that just didn't give a shit and were, I'll put the mask on when it's time to go out and work. And that's it. You go in the dressing room, and if you didn't know somebody, you knew that was the mask guy.
Right. You mentioned El Hijo del Santo. He once said this: when I put on the mask, I'm transformed. The mask gives me strength. The mask gives me fame. The mask is magical. When I remove the mask, I'm a normal human who can walk right by you and not even get a hello. Usually with the mask on, everything is positive. Without the mask, I'm a normal being who has his problems, who cries, who sometimes suffers. I can tell you that I really admire El Hijo del Santo. But do you know who I admire more? The human being. Thanks to him, El Hijo del Santo has a life. And this human being sometimes sacrifices a lot to give this other identity life. Boy, that's summing up being a mass wrestler right there, is it not?
Says it, yes. And to a different degree was part of the reason as Brother Love for me when I put the makeup on and when I put the suit on and slicked my hair back, because my hair was really long and blonde, and I would slick it back and make sure it was wet so it looked darker. And then the makeup on and the suit and everything, that was my mask. And I could take that off. I could walk into an arena with, like with Savage or with anybody else, with other talent. And they would go, who the hell's that guy? Go put the stuff on, go perform, take a shower, get everything off, change into different clothes that were not a white suit and red shirt, and walk out of the arena, and people will go, who the hell's that? I think he's one of the referees. That was my mask.
I got you.
And it enabled you to just as you read with Hijo del Santo, I could just be Bruce. And I loved it when I could get people's opinions on Brother Love when they had no idea who they were talking to. Run DMC, no idea. Telling me about how they wanted to see this Brother Love so they could whip his ass. Well, I can introduce you. I can arrange that. And when they found out, it was like, oh my God. George Steinbrenner, when he found out, he had met Bruce and Brother Love on separate occasions and thought they were two completely different people.
You love that shit, don't you?
I do. I completely do. But that's part of it, because you can hide in plain sight.
Let's talk a little bit about, my understanding, and I could be wrong. I mean, you're the wrestling expert here. This is really a tradition, this masked wrestler business. This is a lucha thing that we started adopting here in America, right?
Well, it's a chicken and the egg. I don't know what came first. In the States, we had our masked marvels. We had the guys that would wear the mask, and whether it was a ski mask, they later on developed what those masks look like and everything to what they are today. But there is a history and almost a religion behind the mask in Lucha Libre. So that in and of itself, that kind of makes it, feel different. And I don't think that there were guys that took the mask very, very seriously. And then there were guys that, that was just their gimmick, and that was it. You go back and you look at a guy like Don Jardine, who was the spoiler in the 60s and 70s and even into the 80s. The spoiler was, to me, one of the greatest masked men I ever witnessed.
Was he the first? Who was the first? Do you recall?
The first that I did?
Yeah, that you saw.
The first I ever saw was the Infernos.
Okay.
And first I ever saw was the Infernos, and then probably El Santo, and then the spoiler. And
okay.
the spoiler was this big masked, just huge man that worked in Texas with Gary Hart as his manager, had the claw, which is why he wore the big black glove. But it was his his work was so unique. The way that he could walk the ropes, he was so smooth. He worked like a man probably 100 pounds less in size. He was so smooth in everything he did, and everything he did was believable. I had the privilege of working with him as a referee later years in Texas, and the way that he controlled the ring, he put every single person in that ring in their place. He called everybody's moves, everybody's everything. He would tell me exactly where to stand, how to stand, and why I'm standing, what to ask. I just learned so much from him that he was a legend to me, and to me, one of the nicest guys in the world. To a lot of other people, one of the moodiest, just crabbiest, nasty people they ever met. So he had those two sides, but if you didn't get on his wrong side, he was a gentleman and one of the best workers I've ever seen in my life. But he would, as soon as he would get in the dressing room, the mask came off. He was Don Jardine then, and didn't mind people, they didn't, hey, spoiler, he was Don then. Now, don't call him Don when he's wearing that mask, but he was able to separate the two in the dressing room. He didn't have to be the spoiler all the time. And the thing that really freaked me out and bothered me for a long time, as a matter of fact, I brought it up years later, but when the spoiler went to New York had a law that they did not allow masked wrestlers to perform. So one of the great masked wrestlers from California, El Olympico, came into New York, couldn't wear his mask. So he wore like a aviator's cap. So his face showed, but he was still Olympico. Jardine goes there and they say, yeah, you can't wear the mask. He goes, but I'm a spoiler. I'm the spoiler with the mask. So you can't wear the mask. So he just went and worked without the mask as the spoiler. And, it was to the folks in New York, the spoiler was this guy with the long brown hair and brown beard. And that just pissed me off as a kid, seeing that in the magazines as a spoiler. And I don't know why, but it was just wasn't right, damn it. Just wasn't right.
And, let's talk about Jardine for a minute, because if you take a look at, like, when Mark Calloway first went to Texas, as I understand it, they put him under a hood, called him Texas Red, gave him a manager, but he too is another big guy wearing a mask, and he too would start walking the top rope just like Jardine. How big of an influence do you think Jardine was on The Undertaker?
I think he had seen him and really appreciated his agility and athleticism. But I always thought, I kind of thought maybe that Don had trained Taker, which he did not. He didn't at all. But Taker was able to emulate that style, and as a big man, work like a cat and be super smooth and believable in everything that he does. So yes, it had an influence on him, but that was something that Mark put into his repertoire, and I think it did well for him. I think it did well for both of them, because it's impressive to see a big man like that move the way that both of them moved. And Jardine was, man, he was just fabulous. Absolutely fabulous.
As I understand it, in Lucha Libre, the mask was first founded in EMLL from an American wrestler named Cyclone McKee, who was working in Texas. And I think most people assume that, and I would have too, that masked wrestling really started in Mexico, but I guess it started in America and we took it to Mexico. So maybe it's not based off of some Aztec or Inca or Mayan tradition. But what I know is it's entertained us all. And you have to look no further when I think of modern wrestling with a mask. And there's lots of different masked wrestlers, and we're going to talk about a lot of them, guys like Kane and others. But Rey Mysterio was really the first luchador during the Attitude Era to get mainstream attention here in America. And that happened, man, decades after Mil Mascaras and El Santo and all these other names had been a part of the territory system here. What was your first impression of Rey Mysterio and him performing with a mask in front of an American audience? Were you surprised that that caught on the way it did?
Well, you look at it and you mentioned Mascaras' name, because Mascaras was the first masked wrestler to ever work New York with the mask. They made the exception for Mascaras, and Mascaras broke that wall down because there was such a demand for Mil Mascaras, and he came in and they thought, well, this is kind of stupid. Okay, we'll lift the mask ban. We're still going to get our 5% tax, by God, on the athletic commissions. Yeah, it was a silly rule. They didn't allow women either. And Moolah broke that wall down. So Mascaras was the first talent to really cross over in the American market and be able to go from New York to Texas to Florida, California, and be a huge star in the States. So Mascaras was that guy, but it was a different style. Mascaras could adapt his style to everybody else's. So Mascaras worked a Western style. He worked that, U.S. style. He could go over and work in Japan. And when it came time to do jobs, it was the only time that he forgot the English that he had learned as well, and only knew 2 words, no job. So it was, he was a big influence on Lucha Libre in general, but also crossing over the States. So you asked about Rey Mysterio. Rey Mysterio, man, is an enigma. And I don't think that, you could have brought Rey over in mainstream wrestling in the 70s. I dare say even maybe the 80s. Because I don't know that people were ready for Rey Mysterio. Rey, man,
broke the mold.
A whole different class.
Yeah.
He's just different. And, Paul Heyman, I remember the call, man. He goes, bringing in Eddie Guerrero, bringing in Rey Mysterio, bringing in Psychosis, I think it was. And they set that place on fire.
Yeah.
It was so different, but yet, you look at it and go, oh man, that couldn't break an egg, but you couldn't look away either. And Rey was able to, the psychology of Rey Mysterio, where he was able to make you believe against any odds, no matter the size, that he can find a way around it and find a way to win. And he's the ultimate underdog that everyone in the crowd, looks at and goes, man, you know what? I can relate to that guy, and I believe him. I want to see him win. I want to help him. And find it hard to believe you could ever turn Rey Mysterio a heel and in the business and life in general. Just a wonderful, wonderful human being. But man, he adapted. I was like, all right, you don't believe I can do this. I'm going to show you that I can do it. And then I'll make you a believer. And Rey has been able to do that time and time and time again. So he proves, doesn't matter how big you are, I can overcome. And even with a mask, probably, we would always say, oh, well, the mask hides the expression. Rey Mysterio gets more expression and more feeling and emotion with his facials than a lot of guys that, without a mask. It's Rey knows how to sell. Rey knows how to show you when he's happy. He knows how to get you behind him when he's hurting, and is one of the most extraordinary talents in general. Mask, luchador, whatever. Just one of the most incredible talents I've ever witnessed in my lifetime. Beyond there will never be another Rey Mysterio. There will be other luchadors and there will be other great stars that are not the biggest guys in the world. There will never be another Rey Mysterio. They made the mold and they broke the mold with him. And so much of that has to do with who Rey is. And he was able to come over here and make people accept it.
In all time, in all space, if I had to pick a wrestler to be on my roster, I was launching some new promotion and trying to get attention, boy, Rey would be one of the first guys I would pick. And with football season over, the action on the floor is heating up, and we want you to pick some winners. It's tournament season, and it's the fight for playoff home court. So there's no shortage of high stakes basketball moments this year. Get in on all the excitement and the action with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. Here's how it's different than all the other daily fantasy you've seen. You're not playing against thousands of other players like pros and sharks. You're simply picking more than or less than 2 to 6 different player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. It really is that simple. For instance, you could say, I think Steph Curry is going to have more than 29 points. I think Kevin Durant is going to have more than 29 points. I think LeBron James will have more than 7 assists. I think Jokic will have more than 10 rebounds. It's that simple. You're all set and you're ready to go. And right now, you can earn up to 100 extra money on Prize Picks with as little as just 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with the NBA, with NHL, and college basketball entries, all available now on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. You can even see what some celebrities like Sugar Sean O'Malley and Meek Mill are doing. Just look at the community plays under the promos tab and you'll see exactly what they're picking. By the way, this isn't just good for men's basketball. It's women's college basketball as well. You don't have to miss on any of the biggest moments. Let's make it fun. The conference tournaments are here. Let's win some money. By the way, I want to give you a heads up on this. This is important. As far as I know, Prize Picks is the only place that offers injury insurance. Let me explain. Your entries stay in play even if one of your guys gets injured. For instance, let's say you had Steph Curry and he goes out in the first half and doesn't return in the second. Well, that player projection won't count against you and the rest of your entries stay live. How about that? You can turn $10 into $1,000 in just a few steps. Prize Picks makes it really easy to play. You can pick and submit in less than 60 seconds, quick withdrawals, easy gameplay. And did I mention they're taking Apple Pay now? It's super easy. We're having fun. We know you will too. By the way, take the over on Steph Curry. That's what I'm picking almost every time. Download the app today and use the code WRESTLE for a first deposit match of up to $100. Download the app right now, Prize Picks, and use the code WRESTLE. You'll get a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So, Bruce, let's talk about some other masked men. Let's talk about the Destroyer. Let's go old school. We went real modern with Rey Mysterio. Let's kick it old school with the Destroyer. Dick Beyer. Man, what an impact he had, not only here in America, but over in Japanese culture as well. I think he was like the first man to wrestle in Japan with a mask on back in the 60s. Do I have that right?
That is correct. He was also the first American babyface in Japan. He became a huge babyface in Japan, and they respected his Dick Beyer. Dick Beyer from Buffalo, New York, was a tremendous amateur wrestler, great amateur wrestler, broke into the business. And I think Vern might have had something to do with breaking him into the business. But Dick was a tremendous amateur. Dick took the business very seriously. And he was also one of the first guys to really monetize and figure out how to merchandise his gimmick. Dick would go in and he had in the old Norman Keizer magazines, Dick would have a ad in there where you could get a Destroyer mask. I've got one in the other room in my other office in there. And you could buy the mask and you would get an 8x10 autograph picture of the intelligent, sensational Destroyer. So I've got a question for you, Conrad. Let's see how we're going to test your wrestling knowledge here. What other character did Dick Byer portray underneath a mask, a different mask? Do you know?
Dr. X?
That is correct.
Yeah, I only know that because I was at a Cauliflower Alley Club years ago when they were putting Larry the Outstanding in, and Larry gave a hell of a speech. He was cracking everybody up, but he was from the podium. He was making fun of Dick Byer, saying, "Oh, because Dick was there." This is before Dick passed, and he's like, "Dick Byer's running around with that fucking mask. I saw him at the urinal. Like, we don't know you're the Destroyer, Dr. X. It's fucking Dick Byer. God damn it!" And the whole place died laughing because this is an elderly man still wearing the mask. And I don't know, Larry calling him out was funny, but I only know that from Larry the Axe Handler.
So up until a few years before his death, Dick used to come to the shows when we'd have TV and we would run a live event in Buffalo. And he would come in his mask.
I love it so much.
And always bring his bag.
Just in case.
Bring your gear. Doesn't matter if you're working or not. Always bring your gear.
Hang on. Is that advice directly from Bruce Prichard? Always bring your gear?
Always bring your gear.
So hypothetically, as folks are listening to this, when you're at Monday Night Raw tonight, somewhere in your luggage, is there a Brother Love suit? I mean, are you always bringing your gear?
If Brother Love were alive, he would.
Okay. I didn't realize he'd been killed off.
No, he's dead. He's dead. Leonard Kelsey's nuts.
So his last appearance, just so I understand, because I don't want to move on from this. Brother Love's last appearance was on the anniversary of Raw. That was it.
Whatever that was.
Oh, no. That was a cinematic match. Y'all were running around the Titan Tower. Brother Love was in there.
Well, that was just me because I was dressed I just wore that suit that
you
day.
wore a white suit that day. I get it.
Yeah. But always bring your gear. And Dick would come in. He had a little gym bag.
Yes.
And Dick came in and would always come in and sit in the dressing room with the mask on, say hello to everybody. And that, if you're watching on YouTube, is exactly what he would wear. The red mask and the little Destroyer shirt. And would always bring his gear, man. And however old he was when he passed and left us, he probably could have had a hell of a match right up until the end. He was just that good, and he was old school. I met him for the first time in Houston. He had a trainee by the name of Mark Reagan, and it was during the break dancing where they would dance on the cardboard box, right?
Yeah.
And Mark was a great break dancer and also an incredible athlete and talent. So Dick was basically taking him around and to different territories and trying to get him booked. And they worked in Houston, and we went out to Benihana afterwards. And it was one of the best nights I ever had because you got this older gentleman. Oh. And the other best part about Dick Byer.
Didn't he wear the mask to the steakhouse?
No, he did not. He did not. Okay. But this is the other best part about Dick Byers. He bleached his hair blonde.
Okay.
So he has this fucking like yellow bleached blonde hair. And again, an older gentleman with Mark and myself and Bill Dundee. I'm sitting there looking at this.
What a career.
Yeah, it's crazy. So the mask guy bleaches his hair. Because he's a heel, damn it. And but it was one of the most entertaining evenings I had so much fun that night, and would see him. Then I saw him a lot more once I went to New York and frequented Buffalo. Just a great guy and a hell of a talent, but he was able to take the intelligent, sensational Destroyer and pretty much huge star in LA, Toronto, like to work up, around the Buffalo area and what have you. Couldn't work, like in New York City because of the mask ban. So he just, I'll go work up here, and did that. Worked for Vern as Dr. X. and how he made people think, okay, well, this isn't the Destroyer. He had this like black kind of patch over his nose and everything that covered up his nose in the Dr. X mask. But same work and everything. But yeah, he took himself pretty seriously, and took that mask and took that gimmick very seriously and protected it as best he could. But again, he was also a guy that once you got out of there, if he was in the arena, he kept that mask on. But once you got out of the arena, the mask came off, and he was a dick. And
I'll be honest, I didn't know how much that would actually work, just covering the nose up. So I just threw it in my Google machine.
Yeah.
My God,
back in the day,
right? I would have believed that was a different human being because Dick had such a distinctive nose.
Yes.
And as soon as you see his nose, you're like, oh, well, that's Dick Byer. That's the
Destroyer. So he covered up the nose. The other thing he did is he wore the tank top on it as well. So you didn't see the body as much.
That's he's a pretty smart feller.
Yes. So that was good, man. And that was an intelligent, sensational Destroyer, Dick Byers, and Dr. X in a nutshell.
Let's talk about other old school talent, man, where less was more. Mr. Wrestling, Tim Woods, had a tremendous career, just been called Mr. Wrestling. You got a plain white mask, white singlet, and he becomes a pretty big star in most of the territories. Why did this work? Just a guy wearing a white mask and white trunks, Mr. Wrestling, here he comes.
Because he was pure as the driven snow, man. And he was Mr. Wrestling. Legit shooter, amateur, hell of a talent, and would go out and wrestle. And that was his gimmick. He was Mr. Wrestling. So the other thing that Tim did, Tim was another guy. Tim, really good looking guy. Tim would work the program where in order to get a championship match, someone in the territory, whether it be the U.S. title, the Texas title, the world heavyweight title, whatever it was, the champion would say, I'm not going to face someone I don't know who you are. You got to take that mask off if you want a title opportunity. So Tim would go out, take the mask off for the match, wrestle the match. And this is what blew my mind. Okay. You have to know this is got to be 7-8-year-old Bruce. And I see Mr. Wrestling. Now, in my mind, the 7-8-year-old, I believe that the mask guys wear the mask all the time. Because I saw pictures in an After magazine of visiting some masked wrestler at home, and like the wife wore a mask, the kids wore a mask, the dog wore a mask. So I believe that.
Well, hang on. They had a fucking mask on the dog.
Yes, they did.
Oh my.
I have it somewhere. I don't know, but
that's amazing.
You go back and like one of those wrestler inside wrestling, Jess.
That's so cool. I love that. Yeah. Continue.
At home with whoever it was. And the dog had a mask, the wife had a mask, the kids had masks, and the dog. So I think that's how they live. Like they don't take the mask off.
Right.
So Tim Woods takes the mask off. Immediately following the match, they leave. We take an intermission. Ring announcer Boyd Pierce makes the announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, out in the front lobby, we have 8x10 photos of Mr. Wrestling unmasked. Mr. Wrestling, Tim Woods, unmasked pictures, 8x10s, only a quarter out in the front lobby right now. And we like look at my mom. Oh my God, they've got pictures. And ran down and got a picture 8x10 of Mr. Wrestling, Tim Woods, and it's Tim Woods sitting in his chair holding the mask. And in my head, I'm trying to figure out when they had time to take this picture,
right,
and get it developed and get it out there and all that shit, man, because it was that was fucked up. That was great. But I got that picture, by God. In that picture, I know I have in that photo album out there, but it's great. And that that blew my mind. So he would work as Mr. Wrestling Tim Woods without the mask for the rest of his run in whatever territory. He'd go from territory to territory and do that. So yeah, man, he was a big deal. He was the original Mr. Wrestling, and just the white mask, white boots, white trunks. That was it. Pure and simple. Pure as a driven snow, by God.
What was it about the knee lift? Talk to me about the knee lift with Mr. Wrestling.
Well, I was wrestling too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was wrestling too. That's a completely different animal.
Well, I mean, that's Johnny Walker.
Yeah.
And he's going to become an immediate top draw. I mean, I guess Woods wasn't able to work a territory. He had some issues in Atlanta, maybe with Ray Gunkel's widow, Ann, maybe Eddie Graham. Do you know anything about what Tim Woods' issue was with Graham and Gunkel and how Mr. Wrestling 2 became a thing?
Yeah, I think, for the most part, it was always about money. Okay. You can boil down every disagreement in the business for the most part to money.
Yeah, you're creative. Yeah.
Yeah. And, they did this Mr. Wrestling number 2 thing, and same white mask, but it had a black outline around the eyes, nose, and mouth. And it made Johnny Walker, because Johnny Walker as a talent was like watching paint dry.
Oh.
No personality, just an old man.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he at 29, he looked like he was 55. He's just like one of those guys, always looked old.
Like J.J. Dillon or Arn Anderson.
Yeah.
They look the same age for the last 40 years. Yeah.
Yes. So, you could say, hey, they never aged, but yet they aged prematurely. It's like, woof. But so 2 was, it was a decent worker.
Right.
But he was short, pudgy, and hokey. I got short, pudgy, and hokey in a mask in Georgia. They love that shit. And so 2 really took off in Georgia, man. Big time. And they found life for Johnny Walker. Then what happens is Jimmy Carter is president. Jimmy was from Plains, Georgia. And they used to go to the matches in Columbus, which was Fred Ward, or Paul Jones.
Not the wrestling guy, the other one.
The promoter, Paul Jones in Georgia, was friends with Jimmy Carter, and of course his mother. His wife was Rosalind, wasn't it? But what was the mother's name? Whatever. Jimmy Carter's mom, the president's mom. She was a big fan of Mr. Wrestling number 2. So she would come to the matches, and then Jimmy Carter, when he came down, had an opportunity.
Lillian was her name.
Lillian, yes. So Jimmy came to the match. They took a picture, a very famous picture of Jimmy Carter with Wrestling 2 in a headlock. And, now all of a sudden, Mr. Wrestling 2 is a national known wrestler all over the place. And, look, he had his friends, and he had his people that would book him. Bill Watts was one. Bill brought him in, put him with Magnum TA, to teach Magnum pretty much how to put everything together. Magnum had the tools, but Magnum was not a great worker. Okay. That took a while. And I think that teaming Magnum with Wrestling 2, first of all, that was the reason they teamed them, but also it worked. It helped Magnum slow down. It helped him put things in the right places. And then they had the 2 of them split as a team, and Magnum worked with 2 every night. And that was going to school, because Magnum now he's in the ring with Wrestling 2, and 2 is telling him everything to do and what have you. And it was great. I just was never a fan. I thought he was hokey as hell. He used to do the the knee lift, but he would do this silly little dance that the people would absolutely pop for and go crazy for and come with the knee lift. Jake Roberts stole the knee lift from wrestling too. And he would do this little 2-2-2 and do the knee lift. But look, I didn't like it. Everybody else did. The audience loved it. But they didn't have to deal with the old, just cynical old man backstage who was just miserable all the time, man. Smoked a pipe and just, bitched about everything. But he had great success. And Wrestling 2's wife made the robes, made all of Flair's extravagant robes. Greg Valentine, of course, Wrestling 2. I think she did Orndorff's, but she's the one that made all the robes for everybody. And so she made a great living for them as well. And went on, I think, he died peacefully in Hawaii. They moved to Hawaii, he retired, and just lived the end of his life. I think he got a much better disposition once he retired from the business, because God damn, he could be a miserable bastard.
Well, his wife could make a hell of a robe, I'll tell you that.
Yes, she
could. Lynn Denton, the grappler, was another we saw a lot of traction with on social media when we talked about masked wrestlers. He wrote a book a handful of years ago, and man, Lynn Denton, he was a staple in the old territory days, especially if you went in the Pacific Northwest, right?
Well, actually, Lynn started in Texas, in Mid-South, or in San Antonio, in Texas. Lynn's dad was a old timer, always around the ring, around the matches and stuff. Would carry the ring for spot shows for different folks and everything in Texas. And Lynn went out, and Lynn was kind of persona non grata in a lot of places, just because his dad didn't have the best reputation, I think. And people would just immediately associate them and go, yeah, I don't want to use him because, whatever. But Lynn went out and just proved himself as the grappler. And it's like, when you're the greatest wrestler in the entire world, by God, they don't call you a great wrestler, they call you the grappler. And that was his catchphrase. And he was an incredible worker. But Lynn, came out as the grappler, and he became a North American champion in Mid-South for Watts. Had the built-up boot. So, one leg was shorter than the other, so he had built-up boot gimmick. When he tapped that toe, by God, and he kicked you in the head, it was like just squishing a tomato on your head. Crimson would flow. And Lynn had great psychology, just an absolute phenomenal worker. Was one of the guys that I think anybody that would come in and go, I want to work with Lynn Denton, because he was just that good. He was really just that good. Got heat, knew how to get heat. Then later on, he went on, Tony Anthony came in, and they brought him in as the Grapplers as a tag team in San Antonio. They put Tony under the grappler gear and made him grappler number 2. Back in the day, like up in New York, now as I say it, it was Kowalski and Stud, the Executioners. And they just call them Executioner number 1 and Executioner number 2. And so you have grappler number 1, grappler number 2. That's how you told them. And grappler number 1 was, stocky and built and like a brick shit house. And then you had Tony Anthony. So it was, they were.
Why did he never get a shot with WWE, do you think?
He did.
No, I'm just saying, it felt like he should have had a bigger run there.
He got a decent run as old T.L. Hopper.
I'll have to take your word for it.
Yeah. But then, they went from being the masked grapplers to taking the hoods off, and they became the Dirty White Boys. And that was Dirty White Boy number 1, number 2. And Lynn was always number one, but Lynn was just an incredible talent. Then Lynn went up to Oregon, and I think, that's, man, he found his home up there. Tremendous talent. Also helped out with the book. Great mind for the business, and a student of Roddy Piper's in a lot of ways in that psychology end of the business. So Lynn got over everywhere he went. He was that type of a talent. He knew how to get over. And his work, you couldn't see through any of it. It was spot on, and you loved to hate him. He was easy to hate. But backstage, everybody loved him because he was a pretty easygoing guy, funny, tough. I wouldn't mess with Lynn, but he was just a good guy, and people liked him. People liked working with him because he was really good in the ring.
Well, if you want to see him without the mask, believe it or not, he was on Nitro challenging Goldberg for the U.S. title. I can't believe that's a real sentence, but it happened on May 11th, 1998. So
Poor
pull out your Peacock and watch Lynn Denton get squished by Goldberg in 53 seconds. The Kemper Arena in Kansas City, Missouri. It went down on May 11th, 1998. Let's talk about another masked wrestler you're pretty doggone familiar with, the Masked Superstar, a tremendous performer, the real life Bill Eadie, who I grew up with as Demolition Axe, but long before he was part of Demolition, boy, he was a top draw as the Masked Superstar. Talk to us about Bill Eadie.
Well, Bill Eadie, is a talent. I think originally he came in as like Beepo or Guido, one of the Mongols, with his bald head, a little gimmick in the back, and everything. But when you look at those pictures, his eyes are just so piercing that he's very easy to recognize as the Mongol. But as the Masked Superstar in the Mid-Atlantic and then in Georgia, when Georgia and the Superstation first started their expansion and the Superstation went everywhere on cable networks across the country, you had this masked wrestler as the Masked Superstar. And again, a bigger guy that worked. He could work with any and everybody, but he was devastating. You couldn't see through any of his work. And it just looked like he was a badass behind that mask. It was just a hell of a presentation. And it just always looked classy to me. It was or what he would wear going to the ring. He would have this top and it had the Masked Superstar face on it. And it just looked cool. I mean, it looked put together and cool. He was just an incredible performer. I'll tell you, only time I ever really got hot at Bill was we were in Houston and Murdoch. It was Murdoch and Superstar against DiBiase and Doc. The deal was, whoever won had to leave or whatever. Murdoch and Superstar were leaving. So it was also, if Murdoch and the Superstar lost, Masked Superstar had to unmask. So they have the match and they go through with the thing. And basically there's, I think, baby faces go over and Murdoch and Superstar run to the back. Just go to the dressing room. And DiBiase and Doc are standing there like, what the fuck? So referee tells them, just go back to the dressing room. So they go back to the dressing room. People are waiting because the stipulation was if Superstar and Murdoch lost, then the Masked Superstar had to unmask. So DiBiase and Doc go in the heel dressing room, and when they get in there, Bill just throws a mask to DiBiase. So they walk out of the dressing room holding a mask up. The only problem with that was the mask that the Superstar was wearing during the match was a black mask. And the mask that they threw Ted to walk out with was a red one.
Oh, no.
And I was like, man, seriously? It was bad enough that we're not getting the unmasking in front of the audience. But then to do that, it hurt. and it hurt the town. And that was all. It was. I always got along with Bill. I think he's an incredible talent. So, if one time, but it just was horrible, absolutely horrible. So yeah, there you see. I just love that top. I like the thing of himself and the double image, and it looked cool.
He comes into the WWF as a Super Machine once with Andre the Giant. Of course, Giant is a Giant Machine, and Blackjack Mulligan is Big Machine. I know this predates your WWE career, but what do you think of the machines?
I loved it. Before that, they actually had worked in Japan as machines, and it was funny just because, again, Blackjack had that USMC tattoo on his arm that was just, to me, so recognizable. And Edie, it was a good spoof. I thought it was a great gimmick of,
It's a
who am I?
Presentation.
Yeah. Who am I? I'm a giant. I'm 7'4". I speak like this. I like wine.
It's sort of an old school Mr. America Hulk Hogan, right?
Yeah.
Where you know what it is, but that's the fun of it.
You have fun with it.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
We talked a little bit about El Santo and Mil Mascaras.
If I maybe on your list, and see, this is what happens, Conrad, when I don't read notes. Okay, is because when you talk about the Mass Superstar, you can't forget about the Super Destroyer.
Oh yeah,
Super D, and that was Scott Irwin, Bill Irwin's big brother. And holy shit, man, you talk about another big guy that could go. Scott Irwin, Super D, was the first one I ever saw do the super suplex, whatever the hell we call it.
Yeah, superplex.
Superplex. And do it with ease. And he could do it with anybody. But man, Scott Irwin was, again, just somebody that was so smooth under the mask. And he was a big bastard, but people believed in him. He was a Terry Gordy type before Terry got hot, and it was another one that people would line up. Man, I want to work with Scott Irwin because he was easy to work with, tough guy from Minnesota, and then later on he would use Bill, his brother, and put Bill in the mask, and they were the Super Destroyers as a tag team, and had a nice little run in Dallas and other places. But man, to me, Super D, as far as a big man during that time with WTBS and Super Destroyer man or Mass Superstar, God bless, they were amazing teams. And Super Destroyer was a great talent. We lost a great one when we lost Scott Irwin.
We should talk a little bit about some of the Japanese influence, because there's a lot of great Japanese wrestlers, but I know you've often got a hard on for any time we talk about the Tokyo Dome. And when I think about hard ons, I think about our friends at Blue Chew, because I'm going to tell you, this is going to get you so damn hard that your partner's not even going to recognize you. And if you happen to be wearing a lucha mask, she might be asking, or he, whatever, who was that masked man? Because this is going to make you feel like a different person. I'm talking about Blue Chew. It's a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. Take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. And the process is so simple. You sign up at bluechew.com, you consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within a few days. And here's the best part. It's all done online. So there's no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door, all in a discreet package. But there won't be anything discreet about your package. Now, let me just give you guys a heads up. Bruce had a new shoulder done, and then another shoulder done, and then a tricep done, and then he had something wrong with his knee. You know what works better than ever? That big old brother love meat. And it can work for you too. Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. Discover your options at bluechew.com. chew it and do it. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code WRESTLE at checkout. Just pay the $5 shipping. That's bluechew.com. The promo code is WRESTLE and you'll receive your first month free. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we want to thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. So, Bruce, let's talk about some Japanese wrestlers. When I think of Japanese wrestlers under mask, the first one I think of is probably Tiger Mask. I don't know if he was the OG, but in my fandom, the first one I remember seeing was Jushin Liger. Of course, there's Black Tiger and a whole bunch of other famous Japanese masked wrestlers. Who's the first one of your memory, and which one stand out as making the biggest impression here in America?
Well, I think Tiger Mask obviously was the first and the biggest, and Tiger Mask was, a Baba creation, and it did great, man. It was, it had its own cartoon and tremendous, huge star in Japan. Tiger Mask would come over. Tiger Mask would work, in California and New York from time to time, but it was, I don't know, it was a novelty here in the States. It was, a guy that could do all these flips and flies and do all this incredible stuff. He was a tremendous worker and a spectacle. I don't know that you ever could have, plus he never stayed long enough. He was an attraction just to come in and go out. He was somebody good to have on the card. It wasn't an attraction that you're going to put in your main event. Oh my God, I've got to see him. But if he was on the card, it's like, oh, hey, shit, I want to see this. But I think to me, he was the biggest and probably the best because he was the first. The rest of them, Liger was Liger. I think they were all great talents, tremendous talents. So to me, when you look at you're going to say, okay, man, pick one from Japan. I think it's Tiger Mask because he's the one that made the impact and everybody else followed in his footsteps.
I can't argue that at all. I do wonder if you got to see much of Jushin Thunder Liger. I mean, I know he did some stuff in Japan and certainly some stuff in WCW and a handful of years ago, even in NXT with y'all, but I can't help but wonder if Jushin Liger was an inspiration to guys like Rey Mysterio and a whole generation of guys who came after him. I mean, when I remember seeing him and Brian Pillman tear it up at an early Super Brawl, my gosh, it just felt like it was way ahead of its time.
It was. I mean, that's because it was. And I think that they were a big influence. And Jushin was influenced by Tiger Mask and so on and so forth. So I think the guys looked at both of them as the influence and kind of that difference in style, in execution. But again, as you look at neither one of them from a personality standpoint, here in the States were ever put into a program where you cared beyond the moves that they did in the ring. And it was hard to, put them in a story for them to be able to cut promos. I think if they had been a heel and had a manager or somebody that could tell their story, and then it was like Muda. I think what made Muda special is you had Gary Hart. You had Gary Hart to be able to tell that story and be able to be the one talking, and made him dangerous because then you saw him in the ring working, and it was like, oh my God, that's a threat to the baby faces there. And Liger and Tiger Mask too, I think both could have been big stars here in the right way.
Let's talk a little bit about the, and you alluded to it earlier, and I guess I did too. We talked about Hulk Hogan coming back as Mr. America, like we sort of knew, but the idea was most of these stories go where, for whatever reason, a guy loses, like a loser leaves town match or whatever, and then he comes back as a masked wrestler. Of course, down in Mid-South, we saw Junkyard Dog come back as Stagger Lee. We would see Dusty Rhodes come out as the Midnight Rider, and he even won the world title, but had to relinquish it because he had to reveal his identity. You couldn't have a masked NWA champion. Hulk Hogan would do it years later as Mr. America. I mean, those used to be viable and it really worked. I mean, I guess not that long ago we tried it, and I know we don't talk about current stuff, but with Elias and Ezekiel, Talk to me a little bit about that concept of it's the same guy, but we're going to present it differently, but the audience is in on it, but the heels aren't.
Well, it's not so much. It was about getting one over on the authority, and it was about getting over on the heel, because it normally was. Look, they didn't lose fair and square.
Right.
It was a loser leave town match, and the heel screws the babyface.
Damn it.
They don't lose on the up and up. They don't lose fair and square. So the groundswell is, I want my guy back, but he can't come back because he lost the loser leave town. And a babyface is going to look, I lost, and I have to contractual agreement. I agreed to that, so here we are. But the loophole is, what if, like, hang on, if the Midnight Rider came riding into town, my good friend of Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream. Now, some people say that I emulate him a lot. Some even say I sound a little bit like the Dream. I look a little bit like the Dream. That old Dust and the Midnight Rider, one and the same. I can assure you, we are not. And people were like, "That's you don't know." You know, they want to be in on the
gag,
on the charade.
Yeah.
So, Dusty did it well, man. JYD, Stagger Lee, man, we did great. Put Tom Jones in the Stagger Lee costume and had, JYD standing right next to him live with the Boys Club. I know I ain't supposed to be here tonight, Bill, but, I had to come and let everybody know that I support Stagger Lee and do the deal with Butch Reed and all those guys. And it was great. You didn't see. It's kind of hard to do Dusty and Midnight Rider together, but Tom Jones had that body type, man. It was just a hair shorter than Dog, but man, that worked. That was some good stuff, and it was believable, and it made people think for a minute. Oh my God, I see Dog, but I see Stagger Lee.
Right.
They're not, and it was, it worked. And just when you're ready to unmask Stagger Lee, and you got the mask halfway up, and then Dog appears, and there's DiBiase, what the hell? Wait a minute, this is Dog, and then gives time for Stagger Lee to make his comeback, and all is right with the world again. We did.
You did Owen like that too.
What's that?
You did a similar gimmick with Owen in the blue blazer, not the early '80s run. But
yeah, not even close.
No, I'm just saying the idea. That's the most modern WWE version I can think of from that.
No, the most modern one was Mr. America.
You're right. That's a handful of years after.
Yeah. And but we did this Midnight Rider deal with Watts. Watts went away and had to leave, and Watts comes back as the Midnight Rider. So Bill, I'm sure I've told this story before, but Bill doesn't smarten anybody up to one night we're in Houston, and he's going to do a run-in, and it was with Bad Leroy Brown, Ray Candy, a few others with Akbar's group and everything. And Bill's going to make a run-in with Cattle Prod. So he's got the mask, he's in jeans and boots and walkie-talkie, and he's like walkie-talkie and somebody, but he didn't smarten any of us up to it. He wasn't there that day. Nobody saw him. And he's standing in the lobby by the concessions. And the cops see this big guy with a cattle prod, and he's talking to somebody on a radio, and they go to take him down because they think, oh shit, this guy's going to do a run in here. He's walking around in a mask, and we're going to stop this before it starts. And Bill tried to tell him who he is in the mask. And got that all straightened out. They came and yelled at me for not telling them. I'm like, I didn't know either. That's just something Bill did. But that was a fart in church. Bill is the Midnight Rider. It just, by that point, it had run its course. And they'd already seen it with Dusty. They had seen it with Dog. That Bill doing it was just a copycat and didn't do it as well. So it just wasn't that good in that regard. And, people were like, yeah, okay. Oh, I've seen it.
I mentioned the Blue Blazer earlier. You talked about how Rey Mysterio, in the 80s, the audiences might not have been ready for it. Obviously, he is a different style and different size and all that than Owen was. But Owen debuted in the company as Blue Blazer. And I mean, I'll never forget watching that WrestleMania 4 or 5 match on just repeat with him and Perfect. But I guess it was 5. I wanted to ask you, why don't you think the Blue Blazer had more success in the WWF in the 80s? I mean, I know we tried it much later, but I'm saying the 80s version, like, was Vince just not in favor of a masked wrestler back then? Or because you had all these over the top gimmicks. I mean, we had a dude with a bird and a dude with a snake, and we've got all these bright, colorful characters. The Blue Blazer, why didn't that click more, do you think?
I just don't, the audience didn't buy it. Audience didn't care for it. Owen was a great worker.
Oh yeah,
Owen did all these spectacular moves and spectacular things, but it was a nondescript character that just the audience didn't buy. It's as simple as that. Sometimes the audience just doesn't buy it.
Well, for whatever reason, they didn't really buy Big Van Vader in the WWF, but he too was a masked wrestler, but it is a mask of a different sort. Of course, he wore the giant head gimmick that sprayed the steam. I mean, that was quite a presentation that we saw in Japan and in WCW. But what we really saw once he was wrestling, and certainly through all of his WWF career, was the Vader mask. It's unlike a lot of other masks. I mean, you're not really hiding the identity. What do you think of the Vader mask?
Well, I liked it, but even before that, Vader did wear a mask.
Oh, sure.
And he did wear a mask. He wore the eating mask, maybe because he liked to eat before he went out. But he did wear a mask, and then I think that the Vader mask, made out of leather, was 1,000 times cooler and added to the mystique of Vader, because he's scary looking anyway. Take the mask off of him, he was still a scary looking dude, man. Big
dude.
Big, nasty dude. So you put the mask on him, it just adds a little more mystique to him and just made him a little nastier, if you will.
Brutus the freaking Barber Beefcake attempted to wear a mask once after his accident. And I guess maybe he even did it once with fur. And then he had Hulk Hogan with him at WrestleMania 9, and he's wearing a mask there. Chat me up about Brutus Beefcake's quote unquote protective mask.
Well, it was a protective mask, and he had to wear that because he'd had his face caved in. Any blow to his face, he risked serious life-threatening injury. So the mask was there to protect his face from any, errant knee or anything to the face that could then cave in all that surgery that had been done.
All right, let's just talk about that. Hypothetically, any chance he gets cleared to wrestle today? I mean, if what you just said is
true, God, no.
I was going to say, there's no chance my man can ever wrestle again now. Yeah.
No. But, his doctors, approved that mask, and they were like, yeah, that this will protect it. But you were like, you also have to, we and the talent he's in the ring with have to be very protective of him as well. Don't throw knees, man. Don't hit him in the face and things of that nature. But no, he'd never be in the ring again as the business evolved and allowing people to work with something like that. His career would have been over.
Almost everybody.
For all intents and purposes, his career was over after that, really.
Yeah. Almost all of our listeners have heard Brad Armstrong be described as one of the best in-ring workers of all time, blah, blah, blah. He also wore the Bad Street gimmick, and then maybe more famously, Arachnaman. Did you ever see Arachnaman for WCW? What did you think of that?
Thought it was horrible.
Just a rip-off Spider-Man. I mean, it's almost as bad as when you guys did the Ninja Turtles.
Horrible. We didn't do the Ninja Turtles.
You did once.
No, we didn't.
You tried it. It didn't air.
No, we didn't. We just let them go out and do their little gimmick that they did on Independence. But that was not something that there was no way. There was absolutely no way that ever would have been considered for television.
Right.
Like ever.
But it did happen in a WWF ring.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure did.
What about
when people say we tried it out because it's something we wanted to do? That is 100% a false narrative.
No, y'all were just having fun.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of fun, the Juicer over in WCW, it's on the heels of the Beetlejuice movie. I know they were trying to appeal to kids, but the Juicer, it's not technically a mask, but certainly aimed at children. I mean, this guy had worked his ass off down in Mexico and become a big part of a great tag team with Eddie Guerrero. Obviously, lots of controversy with Mr. Barr as well. But what'd you think of the Juicer presentation?
I felt bad for Art. He was an incredible talent. Had some issues, but it was, it was a territorial gimmick where everybody was in on the joke because it was Art Barr, that they did in Portland. That, again, man, it worked because it was Art Barr doing it in Portland. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Gimmick was not something that you could take national. It wasn't something because of the story. You had to understand the story with Art and going away and he's the Juicer now, and same thing as the Midnight Rider gimmick and everything. So everybody went in on the joke, and it just came across kind of goofy.
Well, I'll tell you what doesn't come across goofy, and that is the infused oils from theamazingkind.com. Whoa. Bruce, you've been held together by duct tape and the Amazing Kind this year. You have been put through the ringer already. Here we are just halfway through March, and we're just counting off, you had this and you had that. Well, can I recommend the CBD infused oils and soft gels? They're going to help support relaxation, bring about a sense of calm. They've even got CBN over at theamazingkind.com, which can help you sleep. Boy, it helped me sleep. I slept over 8 hours last night. And a lot of that is because I took some of the CBN from theamazingkind.com. But Bruce, the infused oils, man, those have been a real game changer for you during all this, have they not?
Absolutely. Also, the topicals to place on when you have a really bad knee or something like that. It goes directly to the source. It goes directly where the pain is. You can put it right on it, and you're going to feel relief almost instantaneously. At least I do. So you want a great night's sleep, you got the CBN, okay, with CBD. Awesome. But you use those topicals and put it directly where the hurt ails you, all right? You put it where it hurts you, where you're ailing, and you're going to see a big difference. Like I said, I see it damn near immediately and live by it.
Get 20% off your entire order at theamazingkind.com when you use our promo code
Wrestle.
That's 20% off when you go to theamazingkind.com and you use our promo code Wrestle. They got something for everybody. If you've got a painful injury or there's a sore spot or something's hurting, maybe you've got chronic conditions for pain management. Man, these CBD topicals, they could really help. They also are going to help you with muscle recovery and your skin health and anti-inflammatory circumstances. I got a lady in my office, Frances, man, she struggles with migraines. Theamazingkind.com has really helped her. But if you're struggling with sleep, if you've had some insomnia issues, or if you can fall asleep, but then you can't stay asleep, or maybe you just have trouble falling asleep, man, the Amazing Kind can hook you up with their CBN. Try the oils, try the balms, try the topicals, and save 20% off when you go to theamazingkind.com and use the promo code Wrestle. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about, while WCW is doing what they're doing with Rey Mysterio and Psychosis and Juventud, you guys are trying in a similar era some different type of masked wrestlers. Can you try to explain to me what the hell Aldo Montoya was?
He's a soccer player from Portugal.
Why is he wearing a mask if he's a soccer player? Why isn't he wearing like Umbros?
Because he was such a big soccer player that, by God, you had to hide his identity. Jeez. Is that hard to explain?
It is.
Well,
maybe we'll have a better time doing this one. You know, once upon a time, Bret the Hitman Hart had the tag team partner of all tag team partners.
Who?
A big, mean, nasty rhino known as Jim Neidhart. And then you guys threw him in a mask and called him who?
Who?
Talk to me about who.
There's who.
I see who, but why is he who?
Well, who is he?
Is who from Whoville?
Yeah.
So it's
who knows where?
I don't know where, but who does? You're saying who knows where?
Who knows?
So who knows where Whoville is? Did who ever know what his finish was? And let me ask you this: who ever beat?
Who?
Is this the way it was supposed to be? We just sit around and circle jerk ourselves and say who?
Yeah.
Did it work?
Well, I think by that time the bloom was off that rose.
With Neidhart or with who?
Exactly.
Do you think you could work with the people at WWE to get us a who action figure?
There's not one?
Well, if there's not, there ought to be, right?
Okay. Well, who knows?
Do you think there will ever be another Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal and we can see someone in a who mask?
Who?
We need a tribute who.
Okay.
Do you want to cover who next week?
No.
Who do you want to cover next week?
I don't know.
What about Dr. Tom Prichard as Dr. X?
Well, he is a doctor, you know.
Now, where did he get his PhD? Can you tell me that?
Well, he was going to school, but he had a little issue with pharmacy there, and
what was the issue?
Well, you know.
Oh,
who knows?
Got it. Who knows?
Well, so technically, it's like, you know, he's got a medical background.
I'm not arguing that.
Okay.
In the late 90s, of course, the WWF starts to change their stance maybe on masks. It's no longer silly shit like Who and Aldo Montoya. Now we're going to get some darker characters like Mankind in 1996, like Kane in 1997. Was there a paradigm shift? I mean, these are darker characters wearing masks. It's not the silly fun stuff we've seen before. Was this just the evolution of storytelling in WWE? Did Vince have to warm up to the idea? Or was it a function of he didn't want people to see Foley's face and he knew that, hey, that guy was just fake Diesel and a dentist. We got to cover him up. And he's been scarred in storyline. Just talk to me about that.
Well, first of all, Kane was story. It was all story.
Yes.
And it was being able to cover up the scars of this, you know, that was going back to the absolute premise of a mask is to hide one's identity and to cover up. You know, like I said, people would say they were felons and they were hiding from something, or they were so disfigured that they didn't want people to see their face. Hence Kane. He was so disfigured he didn't want people to see his face. He was ashamed of the way that he looked because of the scars, the fire that he started. And or that, you know, it's like that's a function of that, to hide and to hide behind so that people couldn't ever see his pain and his hurt and feel what he feels. With Mankind, you know, it was, you know, who's Mankind? And that's Mankind. It's a structure, you know, the original thought process was of Anthony Quinn, or is it Anthony Quinn? Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs. And that's kind of like looking at that, you know, this is a monster that needs to be restrained. And this mask was something to kind of illustrate that. And same thing with Mick, you know, it was hiding scars that he felt as Mankind that he wanted to cover up and not let everyone see, because his scars were a reflection of Mankind. So those were story related. The mask was a big part of their story, part of their backstory, and part of their current story that you could kind of lean into.
We also saw in the late 90s another masked wrestler who seemingly came out of nowhere. Now, he'd been around wrestling for a while, but now he's in the WWE and he's going straight to the top, working main events with Bret Hart. Of course, we're talking about the late, great Patriot, Del Wilkes. He was a blip on the radar in the scheme of things for the WWF, but boy, what a run he had, man. I mean, working against the champ right away in the middle of this USA versus Canada angle. What can you tell us about the Patriot Del Wilkes? I know you worked with him in Global too.
Well, Del was broken in, Vern Gagne in the AWA. He was a trooper or whatever, state trooper or something like that. Again, a guy with a great look, great body and everything. We had talked about bringing him in at that point. Global Wrestling Federation with Joe Pedicino was opening up in Dallas, and they were going to have play on ESPN and what have you. And they wanted a babyface, and they had this, by God, all-American idea of the Patriot and put Del under the mask. And he was that USA Patriot, by God, that people could get behind and felt good. He took it to Atlanta, took it to Japan, and it was a way to hide the lack of emotion that you saw on Del's face, or that you didn't see on Del's face. I don't know that Del's, had the best facials in the world. The mask allowed him to be somebody else, and he got a lot of expression and a lot of emotion out of that mask. So that gimmick that started in Dallas and he was able to take and go worldwide was, to me, that's a credit to Del to be able to go out and do that and make that gimmick work. And that's pretty hard to do sometimes, especially with that kind of a gimmick. But he did, pulled it off, and I thought he had a hell of a run until injuries just took their toll.
When you look back at the history of masked wrestlers, at least here in America, it's crazy to think how a lot of times they don't win the big one. As crazy as this is, Abyss and Blue Demon, I think, are the only two wrestlers to win the NWA title. And
I'm sorry.
Well, I don't even know that we really count that by that point. Do you think that promoters just felt like, I mean, why haven't we seen like a masked guy go on last at WrestleMania or win the Royal Rumble or win the world title?
With the exception of Rey Mysterio.
Right.
Tell me one masked wrestler that's really relevant. And I mean that in this way, that with the internet and the ability to search and find, who's who and what they really look like and everything, I don't know that mystery could sustain in today's environment by any stretch of the imagination. I think people would go search it. You'd have your dirt sheet writers out in California putting up pictures on their websites saying, this is their real name, this is their wife, this is what they've done, this is who they are. They're not really, so I think that Ray is kind of the last of that breed that you could do. I think there is an opportunity there. I think it's
Kane and Mankind. I mean, but that's probably it at the top.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's other, there's other mass talent, that.
Oh, Fiend, the Fiend. I'm forgetting.
Come out. Yeah, I mean, there are. It's just in different ways.
Yes.
So I just think that the audience has gotten a little more sophisticated on that. They want to be able to see who's under that mask, and then they can't suspend their disbelief enough to just let it be, man, and enjoy the moment. Just go with it, man. Have fun. And instead, you want to overanalyze everything to the point where it's no fun. I went to the Aerosmith concert and saw Steven Tyler reading the words off of a teleprompter. It didn't make it any less fun for me. I enjoyed being in that moment and watching my favorite band, one of my favorite bands, perform live, and took it for what it was. And I got to see them do their thing better than anybody else. So it was. I just think that the audiences sometimes overanalyze and take things way too seriously.
Talk to me a little bit about, because we don't talk about current stuff at all here on the program as a rule, but it does feel like, when we talked about the reason that some of these masks would change, or like Stagger Lee or Mr. America or Midnight Rider. Well, we've seen with like Finn Balor's presentation, once upon a time he would become the Demon, and then more recently, unfortunately, it's no longer with us, Bray Wyatt would become the Fiend, and we all got used to Bray Wyatt without the mask. But then when he put the mask on, it really was a totally different presentation, right?
Right. It was, again, that was tapping into people's psyche.
Yes.
And there are, people, it's like how people see themselves sometimes, where you may look at somebody and go, oh my God, but they see themselves as larger than life and, fit as a fiddle and what have you. So it just allows people to tap into that psyche and live vicariously through another character.
Of course, the Ultimo Dragon had a cup of coffee with the WWE. He was one of my absolute favorites to watch over in WCW. Enjoyed his WWE stuff too. But when I think about more modern guys that you and I think,
you know what I enjoy about Ultimo Dragon?
What?
I think he's a great trainer.
Really?
He is. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves as far as training people. He went to Mexico, opened up a training school, and I got to watch. I thought he was a tremendous trainer. Very just goddamn on the fundamentals that I think that people miss sometimes. He had the psychology and knew how to train. That's hard to do. Teaching is hard. And I thought that he was a very good trainer and very good teacher.
Well, how about that? A little praise for Ultimo Dragon. Didn't have that on my
super guy
bingo card today. And how about this? You talked about Matinee Idol. He's a damn handsome man. You see him without the mask, and you're like, why did he wear a mask?
No, exactly.
Yeah. Somebody who did wear a mask, and we'll bust his balls about wearing a mask anytime we damn well please. The Hurricane, Shane Helms. When Sugar Shane first came over from WCW, he was not wearing a mask. It wasn't too long, I guess, before someone had the idea, hey, let's make him a superhero and let him be sort of Green Lantern inspired. He put the mask on, and dude was a merch machine and is responsible for some of the more fun moments in WWE history, like the double choke slam in the Royal Rumble with Triple H and Stone Cold. And of course, he beat The Rock on Monday Night Raw. Bruce, the Hurricane. What's up with that?
Oh my God. Love him. Love Shane Helms almost as much. I don't think I love Hurricane more. But I mean, from being in Chicago and Steve Austin going, hey kid, what's that there on your ring there? And him talking about Green Lantern and everything. And the rest, as they say, is history. Tremendous guy, wonderful human being, and took that character, made it larger than life. And everybody got it, had fun with it. Nobody looked at, oh my God, I'm getting beat by the Hurricane. It was like, oh, hey man, I want to work with the Hurricane. Because it was fun. The audience was into it. They loved, there's a hurricane coming through. And when he would don his alter ego and be the reporter, that was good too. It was fun. It was a fun character. And I think Shane had a lot of fun with it. I don't think he can fit in the outfit anymore, but like even the mask, I don't think that'll fit anymore.
Will you stop?
What?
Let's talk about some.
I love me some Sugar Shane Helms.
Let's talk about some silly ones. Did you ever see the Black Scorpion gimmick over in WCW?
Unfortunately.
What about the Shockmaster?
Yeah, come on, man. That's like one time.
They did it a couple times.
Yeah, well, they shouldn't have.
What about the Conquistadors? You had fun with them, the original tag team.
The originals. Jose Luis Rivera and Jose Estrada.
And then they came back during
they did.
And Hardy Boys feud. It was really nice to see Estrada moving around as well as he was.
Yes. See. Yeah, there was Juan Cena.
Oh, listen to you.
Great luchador from Guadalajara. He was absolutely awesome. And then yeah, there were quite a few of them. But
did you ever see the Curry Man character?
God, that was the stupidest thing I ever saw in my life. But go back to the Black Scorpion for a minute.
Okay.
Jesus, absolutely. It's. I'm shocked. I shouldn't say this. I know I'm gonna get just
do it.
Eat up for this. Well, it's almost as if Vince Russo was booking it then.
But he was.
The Black Scorpion. Well, who is it? I don't know. I have no finish for this. But we'll have this guy, and he goes around, and Ole will do the promos for him. And Al Perez was told he was going to be the Black Scorpion. Dave Shelton, the Angel, was told he was going to be Black Scorpion. And they both portrayed the Black Scorpion on the road. And then what do? You go to Old Faithful in the end. Because nobody knew that was Ric Flair that night. And nobody said, oh my gosh, this doesn't look like even one of the Black Scorpions that we have ever seen before who's in this match. It just was silly and just
and you loved it.
I hated it
so much. I can
absolutely hate it. I remember because I was during the time I was fired from WWE, and I went to the WCW show in Houston, and Sting and I went out afterwards, and just to listen to him lament about it, I was like, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know who it's going to be. It's been Al, it's been Dave, it's, and he didn't at that point which was early on, which they would use these different scorpions and shit. He didn't know what the payoff was. I think the original thought was it would be Al Perez, but by that point, I think Al was already like persona non grata and not figured in. But yeah, that was a typical just kind of, let's start this. We have no idea how we're going to end it. I've been there, I've done that. But this was a good example of one of those. But
do you think, listen, you've had a lot of good takes today on some of the bad WCW ideas over the years, but maybe one of the worst WCW ideas over the years is when our pal Eric Bischoff decided to unmask Rey Mysterio. From a
stupid idea is that?
From a business standpoint, I wouldn't even fathom a guess how many millions, I'm probably at this point, tens of millions of dollars worth of Rey Mysterio merch, and especially just the mask itself, but the merch with the mask on it. If you take a trip down any tourist spot in the entire country of Mexico, every bootleg street vendor in the world has 30 different versions of that mask, and WCW didn't sell them. What is going on? Right?
Yeah. And didn't get it. Absolutely did not get it. But again, I'm also a guy that loves masked wrestlers. So to me, it was, you just killed off this really cool gimmick in a guy that when he puts the mask on becomes a superhero.
Right.
I don't think Rey without the mask is the superhero.
No.
I think he can pull that off. Rey without the mask, the human being, is like at the top of my chart. I just think from an audience standpoint, that's kind of like, oh God, not the best.
Not the best indeed. That brings me up though to the whole mask stipulation. Over the years, we've seen mask versus mask or hair versus mask. And you sort of talked about it at the top of the show that you and Pat would sort of make fun of that a little bit, because it's not like when you're watching a movie like Batman and Batman, it's Bruce Wayne. We're following Bruce Wayne through the movie. Sort of the same thing with Superman and Clark Kent. But what did you think of mask versus mask or mask versus hair matches? Is there a time and place when it's viable, or do you think it's all just silly shit?
Well, no, I do think it's viable because I think that just normal human tendency is you want to see what's underneath there, whether you know who they are or not. We just thought it was always funny. It's like, oh, hey, I have no idea who that is. But you still want to see them unmasked. You want to see what they look like. What are they hiding? Can't count the number of times that El Gran Marcus was unmasked, and it was, there's Juan Garcia. It's like he's just looks like Juan Garcia, but with the mask, it was El Gran Marcus, and that was cool. But you talk about hair versus mask matches, and I've got to go back to, because I was gonna wait, but I'll just go ahead and do it now. As far as like, well, Bruce, what was your favorite mask gimmick ever? And my favorite mask gimmick ever was after Gino Hernandez had bleached his hair blonde, and we had a hair versus hair match with Gino versus Jose Lothario, and they shaved Gino's head bald. So Gino comes back the next week wearing a mask with hair sewn into it. So you didn't get to see Gino bald right away. And not only did he shove it in your face by wearing a mask, he wore a mask with hair in it. And I thought that was the absolute greatest hair mask gimmick that I've ever seen. And finally got to the point to where the only guy that can unmask Gino is the one guy who has never been unmasked himself. Mil Mascaras versus the masked Gino Hernandez, mask versus mask. And that one worked because now it's Gino under the mask, but you want to see him bald. Because hair didn't grow back as fast in those days. So he kept it tight and everything until it was time to unmask him. That to me that worked. That was a great gimmick.
Let's do a few questions here, and then we'll put a button on this one. John Cooney says, my favorite mask wrestler of all time is Kane. Would love to hear what he thought about Kane taking the mask off, if he thought it was the right move, and what he thought about Kane putting it back on in 2011. So, Bruce, in this scenario, you are he. You're not who, you're he. What'd you think about Kane taking the mask off, and what'd you think about Kane putting the mask back on?
Thought it was time. I thought it was time for him to take the mask off. We had gone through the voice box. We'd gone through so many different incarnations of the King character that was like, okay, this is something new. It's a new direction to go. And of course, I wanted to mess up the hair and all that stuff, which we did for a couple of weeks. But it was just time. So I thought it was the right decision or right thing to do.
Here's another one from Anthony. How does Bruce feel about those that took off their mask for a different promotion and then go to another promotion with one on? Of course, I think he's talking about Rey Mysterio, because Rey was unmasked and then showed up here with a mask.
I mean, again, back in the day, in territory days, guys could do that easily. You go to one territory, Mike McCord, Austin Idol, worked with a mask all throughout Texas and everything. Forget what the hell he was called, but he worked with a mask, and then he would come back as Iron Mike McCord, and then later on Austin Idol. But it would give you longevity. Okay, I'll go work in a mask. Tom Jones is another one. Mr. Ebony and he had a very distinct body, but he would cover it up as Mr. Ebony and would wear like these long flare pants in the ring. And as Tom Jones, he would either wear a singlet or wrestling gear. But different guys, it's just longevity. So whatever works.
JB Boyette says, growing up in continental Southeastern, I'm going with Lord Humongous and the Bullet. I can't believe we went this entire time and we didn't talk about Bullet Bob Armstrong. Man, that was a big difference when he was just Mr. Armstrong versus when he was the Bullet. What can you tell us about Bullet?
Well, you know how he became the Bullet.
Tell us the story.
So he was doing tricep in the gym with a dumbbell and kind of and Ted DiBiase was spotting him, and Bob dropped the weight on his face and crushed his face. So Bob was very self-conscious about the way that he looked and put the mask on because he wasn't crazy about the surgery and everything. To me, I mean, other than his eyes were a little different, but I think Bob in the beginning thought, I'm grotesque. Oh my God. He wasn't. He just wasn't. And but he got that, he got the bullet gimmick over. He was Bullet Bob. He was still Bob Armstrong. But when he put the mask on, he was the Bullet. And it worked for him. So, and Lord Humongous, to me, there was only one Lord Humongous, and that was Jeff Van Camp from Pensacola. He was a cop, got in the business in Pensacola, in Continental, big bastard, but he had a dedication to that humongous gimmick. He came to Mid-South and we destroyed him. But no, he came to Mid-South, worked with Jake, and had some of it was just classic. He was a horror monster. He was an honest to God, real life monster, and people were afraid of him. So, Sid did his thing. Sid didn't do it even a quarter, not even a tenth as good as Jeff Van Camp did.
We got to talk about Francis Reyes' question. He wants to know, do you have any Mexican masks in your collection?
I do not. I don't, the only mask that I have two masks. I have a Destroyer mask that I told you about earlier that I bought as a kid, and I have one of Kane's masks. Those are the only masks I have. If I could get a Mascaras original, an actual, real Mil Mascaras mask, I would like that.
A friend of ours has one. I'll tell you who to call. You'll be blown away by who has it.
Yeah, well, they should send it to me. They should just send it to me.
He might. If you call him, I'll give you his number.
Okay.
Speaking of somebody's number I have, we're winding down. We got 3 questions left, but I thought, you know what? Let's go ahead and bring in a friend of ours, because a friend of ours is doing some pretty, you'll count this guy as a friend. That's a surprise. Will you just let me do it?
Surprise I have a friend.
Well, more than me. I guess there's one other guy out there who claims you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Mr. Dan St. Germain. What's going on, Dan? How are you?
Hey, dude? What's going on? Bruce, Conrad, this is like a giant thrill for me. So
Dan, you're so big on the screen. You're like a giant.
This is too big. I know, man.
Look at the Dusty Rhodes.
I gotta let off the donuts right now. I'm starting to get viscera titties, so I gotta get a little bit.
Very voluptuous today.
Thank you very much. I got a Renaissance woman look.
Yeah. What are you doing with yourself, man?
Well, I got a new special out, Dance Fatty Dance, that's free on YouTube. And of course, we have Wrestle Roast on the wonderful ad-free show network, if you guys want to check us out here. But how are you doing, man? You look great. Bruce's house, by the way, is beautiful. If you guys have never, well, you guys probably never have been, but it's
they've never been there.
I've been. Gorgeous. Dave Silva has never. He's been invited, but he's never shown up.
Dave doesn't come though.
No,
you can.
I always
let my friends inside the door.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Dan,
tell me about this fatty dance. Can you do it for us real quick?
No, I can't do it. I can't just. You gotta watch it. It's free though, so it's like this is the easiest gimmick ever, guys. Just jump on and leave a comment.
Okay, so I want to see it. How do I see it?
You got to see it on YouTube. It's free on YouTube. Dance Fatty Dance. And follow me on Instagram too. But I'm on Dance. It's an 800-pound girl's label, but just put in Dance Fatty Dance into your little YouTube search bar gimmick, and
there it is.
It'll pull right up, baby. So trying to get those views up.
46 minutes and 21 seconds of great comedy. And if you weren't with us at the OG Starcast, the roast of Prichard, to this day, Dan still has the most lethal roast joke we have ever heard in the history of professional wrestling. He does that on a pretty regular basis over at Wrestle Roast on adfreeshows.com, but be sure to check him out on YouTube. Dance Fatty Dance. We're still winding down with a couple of fan questions here about masks.
Are you in New York?
I'm in New York. I'm in Queens.
You could have just come over here and done the show with me here.
I know. I just found out you guys were recording like an hour ago. So
we did too.
So
we did.
I mean,
so I'm
even when we planned it 15 minutes before, I go, "Oh shit, my phone's blowing up." I'm sorry. So,
man,
do you have a favorite masked wrestler, Dan?
I mean, obviously Rey. That's the easy answer, right? Everybody says Rey.
Yes.
I'm gonna do. I'm gonna give like a little bit of a, I guess, marky answer. And Andre the Giant. Andre is Giant Machine or whatever in Japan. It was only like for like a month or something like that, but it was the coolest looking heel I've ever seen. I loved it. Yeah, man, that was
probably he was a giant in a mask.
He was a giant in a mask. Yeah, it was. I kind of want to get the action figure. That was amazing. But I wish I was around for like the Mil Mascaras and all that kind of stuff. Like I would have really dug that. I feel like now it's like you can count on your hand how many great. There's like Rey, there's Kane, I guess like Abyss and Impact. Dragon Lee now he's doing pretty good. So. But it seems like it's kind of a lost art form.
Kind of like that wallpaper. I'm digging the dogs in the background.
Thank you. That's all my wife.
I can't look away.
That's all my wife. But I do have a couple. I have a couple questions, Bruce, about there was in the 90s. I feel like you guys struck out a little bit in the 90s with what was going on with Quang?
Fair question.
As Conrad would say, Quang.
Quang.
So he was El Casario in Mid-South because Carlos had sent Savio over to learn to work and kind of, get some experience in the States and sent him to Watts first to work as El Casario. And we gave him a hard time. And then later on came up and he was used to wearing the mask and he was TNT in Puerto Rico. And wore the mask and then painted his face and all that stuff. So when he came up, it was like, okay, what can we do? And Quang was born, just Quang, by God. Because he did martial arts.
Where'd you get the name Quang?
Out of the Gimmick Names Are Us book. There's a whole book. It's right next to the box of gimmicks. It's on the bookshelf there. And didn't you see it? It was right in the other room.
Oh, I didn't see it. I saw that other box of gimmicks, but I didn't see that one.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to talk about that. It was like back to back, where it was like Quang and the Sultan. Those were the two. Like, this was like right. Like Rikishi was so awesome, and it was right between. It was right in the middle of Head Shrink or Fatu Making a Difference.
Fatu Making a Difference.
And if you haven't seen the Sultan, he wore like. It was like he was like, I don't know, kind of like a Dollar General Kazam. He came out with a corset and genie pants, and I think he even had a Mania match. Right? Was he against Rock?
With the Rock?
Yeah, sure did.
Did not go over.
Had a ponytail in the back.
Oh my God, I forgot about the ponytail.
That's the best part.
Absolutely. If you pulled it, you would just pull the mask and realize, oh shit, man, that thing's unattached.
Well, and then Rikishi was such an amazing gimmick right afterwards. But when that's a question that I have. Like, when you guys are doing a gimmick like that, how long? Like, how many? Or you're like, all right, give it. Sometimes you're like, give it time. Because like Judgment Day is a perfect example. When Judgment Day first came out, people were like, I don't know, and now they're a really hot stable. Like, is there a point where you guys are like, all right, this isn't working, let's cut bait? Like, do you give it a certain amount of time?
When it stops working. When you realize you try as you may, and it's just like, okay, they're done.
Because like I guess the big example of that is the Mantar mask, right? Where you're like, all right,
oh God.
You think I'm bad to you, Bruce? You think I'm bad? Look at Dan.
Look, the Sultan had, he was destined for greatness. He had Bob Backlund and the Iron Sheik as his manager.
That's right. That's a lot.
That was heat on top of heat, on top of a worker with just the gimmick that was like, little kabuki-ish, very kabuki-ish.
Man, Yeah.
We also saw Adam Arpin had a question. Were there ever any discussions of making this a permanent look for Taker to add to the mystique and aura? If you kept this look for Taker, would you have gone with a Freddy Krueger type makeup job? Of course, we're talking about when he wore that Phantom of the Opera type mask. What did you think of that version of the Undertaker character?
Again, that was to protect his face. He had his orbital crushed and shattered and underneath, and just to protect his face to allow him to get back sooner. And that allowed him to get back sooner and protected his face. He could take Mabel's punch to the face then.
Ramon wants to know, Bruce, how would you guide wrestlers to convey emotion while wearing a mask? You said earlier that
study Rey Mysterio.
Yeah, that's it, man. Right?
Yeah, the best. Even Mascaras was another one. Mascaras wore a full mask and still could convey emotion with his mask on. Just those two guys are probably the best.
Last one.
What? Take your pills, Dan.
I know.
Dan, take your pills.
I'm on the same shit Bruce is on.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Well, that explains it. Craig wants to know, Bruce, can you ask Max Moon to send some photos and tape? Boy, that's a deep cut. What a great line that is. You can tell he's been listening since the beginning. Dan, Bruce, have we left any stone unturned talking about Masked Men? Is there any others you want to hit, Bruce, before we wrap this one up and I'll go watch Dance Fatty Dance together over on YouTube?
I appreciate it. Well, you guys were talking about Lord Humongous. Was there ever a time where you guys would get like a cease and desist from Mad Max or anything like that? I always wondered about
Mid-South. Nobody watched it. Nobody watched that shit. It was, we used popular music too. No,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, so never. You guys never had any like problems with licensing or anything like that. There's nobody.
No, not back in the territory days. Absolutely not.
Because you guys cover your ass pretty good up in Stamford, but yeah, when it's
it's a little different now.
I loved it though, man. When you would have like it would be like just Jerry Lawler would put on these matches of like the Ninja Turtles versus Freddy Krueger. You're like, how is this guy getting away with this shit?
Oh, he worked with Frankenstein and the werewolf and everybody, man.
It was amazing, dude. It was
Lawler
amazing.
Worked with the whole damn Universal Studios, whatever monsters or wherever they're from.
Well, I did want to say thank you guys. I mean, this has been. I've been a mark for this show for years and years. I started listening to the show. I saw you guys live in LA and Los Angeles in 2017. And after I was writing on the sitcom, and every Friday night, like I had Something to Wrestle in my schedule. I wasn't getting a lot of dates, but unfortunately, the women of Hollywood were not that into me. But I would listen, man, and it was. I remember I'd go to Jack in the Box. I mean, I think I'm the reason that I think you guys are the reason I have diabetes, but it was a blast. I would just
You're welcome.
I would listen to 3 hours of you guys just talk the shit. Still the greatest wrestling podcast ever. So this is like, for me, This is my Tonight Show getting on here with you guys. So thank you so much.
So Conrad asked me the last thing what we didn't cover, and Dan, I'm doing this for you.
Okay.
To me, one of the other greatest masked man of all time, the Unknown Comic.
I remember that.
And the Unknown Comic, man, in my teenage years and what have you, was on the Gong Show, Chuck Barris, and he would come out and he would tell the corniest, most horrible jokes. And he came to Houston on March 7th, 1984. And buddy, if you're listening, and Jill and Beverly,
I've heard this story before.
For my birthday,
yes,
all I wanted was to go see the Unknown Comic, and he was at the Laugh Stop in Houston on my birthday. So we made a night of it, by God. And I tried to get tickets. I said, no, don't get tickets. We already got them for you for your birthday. Oh, doesn't get any better than that. We're going to go to Benihana. We're going to have good dinner. And then we're going to go see the Unknown Comic. We eat at Benihana's, man. And I'm having this great meal. And my girlfriend goes to the bathroom, comes back and says, oh, shit, we got to go home. So we got to go home. We got to go to the Unknown Comic. She goes, no. I tore my contact. I've got to go home and get my glasses. We've got time to go home and then make it back. But I don't want to miss any of the Unknown Comic. You won't, would you? So we drive home about 25 minutes. I lived in a townhouse. Very seldom that late at night, would you have a parking spot in front? I had a parking spot right in front. I go, oh my God, how lucky can it be? Go in, I go to put the key in the alarm. I go to turn the alarm, but there's no alarm going off. This is odd. And then I get jumped from behind. I grab the person, I run them into the wall, and then all these other people go, oh my God, surprise. And there's a surprise, like all these people in my townhouse for a surprise party. And I look, and I'm looking around, and everybody comes in, and I grab my girlfriend and go, can I talk to you real quick? We're still going to the Unknown Comic. Right?
I love that.
She's like, everybody's here. They're all here for you. I go, cool. They can say, we're still going to the Unknown Comic. Right? Please tell me that we have fucking tickets to the Unknown Comic tonight. She goes, no, that was just a ruse to get you. And I have never let them forget that.
I heard about it on your birthday last year.
That's how she became an ex-girlfriend, man.
Yeah,
from that.
Exactly.
So you used your shoot karate on this guy when he was like jumping for you from behind?
Actually, I did. Yes, I just okay. You go in and it's dark, and you put your key. Back then, it was a key alarm. So like when you open the door, the alarm goes off.
For sure.
So you got to put the key in, turn it off. So I always keep the key. And I noticed there was no alarm. The guy jumped me, and so I had a staircase right there. I just hooked his legs. Ran him back into the corner of the wall. I felt bad, but don't jump somebody in the dark when they're coming into their own house.
Why not?
Well, try it.
Okay.
I feel like hearing that story, I think there was still money left on the table with like Brother Love versus the Fink or something. Like I think that would have been a help. Maybe for Saudi they can.
That's where the money will stay. On the ground.
Leave it on the table.
I'll tell you what's money, and that's Dance Fatty Dance over on YouTube. Check out Dan St. Germain. It's live right now. And how much does it cost to watch, Dan?
Oh my God. I'm glad you brought it up. It's free. It is free, folks. So please just come and check it out. The only thing I ask, leave a nice comment, follow me on Instagram, and hey, check out Wrestle Roast on ad-free shows. Also, my friend Nathan has a great t-shirt company, Storyline Tees, if you love cool wrestling shirts. So there you go. I got in all my plugs, guys. I jammed them in.
Dave, edit that part out.
Thanks for all the time today, Dan. Everybody,
thank you.
Check out Dance Fatty
Great
Dance.
to see you, man.
Yeah, great to see you too, man. I love the show. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
No, thank you for coming on, man. And by the way, we would love to shield for your products. If you're listening to us and you're trying to target men that are 25 to 54, look no further than advertisewithbruce.com. If you've got a question for next week's show or a follow-up question about masked men or the territories, the best place to leave that question is our YouTube. That's somethingtowrestle.com. Of course, we can still have the conversation over on social media as well. Everywhere you enjoy social media. It's at Prichard Show on Twitter and Instagram. It's Something to Wrestle over on Facebook. We've got some Brother Love swag and merch for you as well over at somethingtowrestleshirts.com. And if you think we've earned it, man, leave us a review. We'd greatly appreciate it. But the easiest, cheapest, best way to support the show is to go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications bell for our YouTube at somethingtowrestle.com. Before we get out of here, I want to remind everybody, we have an affiliate partnership with Fanatics. I know it's WrestleMania season. They're going to be running all kinds of great specials. I was just talking with Eric earlier today. There's more than 170 NWO items to this day. So even if you're a nostalgia fan, there's something for everybody. You want the latest Cody Rhodes shirt? They got it. You want an old school NWO shirt? They got it. And everything in between. Belts and hats and koozies. Oh my. Go right now to shopwrestlingmerch.com. Now, to be clear, this is the official affiliate partnership with Fanatics and WWE Shop. Nothing bootleg here. Same great WWE products you're used to getting from Fanatics. Same great pricing. Doesn't cost you anything, but it does help the show. So click the link that's in the description for today's episode. If you're watching on YouTube, just scan that QR code. It'll take you right there. Or just put it in your Google machine. Shopwrestlingmerch.com. Bruce, I never know what to expect when we sit down and click record, but today was an excellent episode. I love talking about the good old days of professional wrestling. And man, you've called the last 3 shows. You wanted territories. We picked up where we left off for territories 2. Now we just did Masked Man. What's next, Bruce? What do you want on next week's agenda?
Bald people.
Bald wrestlers?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Is it really bald wrestlers?
No, it'll hit me in the middle of the night.
Okay. Well, in the middle of the night, we'll find out what our next topic is, and I'll be sure to tweet about it and ask you guys if you have questions. And then with about 30 minutes notice, we'll be back next week recording an episode with Bruce Prichard.
Hey, dude, this was almost a disaster today, okay? I'm just letting you know that.
We skirted it. I was so happy. Listen, this
so
week,
close to saying can't happen.
This is so close to what it was like a few years ago. We're going to record on Tuesday. Okay, now it's Wednesday. I think I can do Thursday. No chance on Friday, but Saturday, I'm all set. My phone died. I fucked myself. I'm sorry. How about this time? Oh, shit. There's fire hydrants. I got to put them out. We're going to be back soon before WrestleMania, by God, with another edition of Something to Wrestle. We might record at 2 a.m. It might be on Bald Motherfuckers. A comedian might run in. In the meantime, if you do have a little bit of a delay before we air again, go watch our buddy Dan's special, Dance Fatty Dance. It's free on YouTube. Dance Fatty Dance. Bruce, thanks for all the time today. This was a lot of fun, man.
Absolutely. Loved it.
And we'll see you guys hopefully next week right here on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard.
Rock on.